First documented at the end of the Bronze Age, around 3,200 years ago, Palestine is a conventional name used between 450 BCE and 1948 CE. It refers to a region geographically located between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River. The Palestinians are the indigenous people of this area, and their identity is deeply rooted in the land of Palestine. But in 2025, a shocking announcement stunned the world. President Donald Trump declared that Israel would hand over Gaza to the United States, and the people of Gaza would be expelled. So, in this video, we will examine the US and Israeli plan to take over Gaza. Keep watching. On February 6, 2025, President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held a press conference at the White House, presenting a plan for the US to take over Gaza by relocating 1.7 million Palestinians to neighboring countries and redeveloping Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East. This goal is clearly supported by many right-wing Israeli politicians, with the intent of fulfilling Netanyahu's agenda. Trump also remarked that Gaza is good, fertile, and beautiful land. The US would take control of the Gaza Strip and implement a long-term ownership plan by rebuilding it, after the area had been bombed continuously for over 15 months, which nearly destroyed all infrastructure in Gaza. Airstrikes by Israeli forces using US-supplied bombs destroyed around 60% of buildings, including schools, hospitals, and 92% of residential homes. Trump stated, "We will own it and do whatever is necessary, such as defusing all unexploded bombs and other dangerous weapons, leveling the area, and clearing out destroyed buildings." This long-standing Israel-Palestine conflict has already claimed the lives of many Palestinians and turned millions into refugees. But for Trump, he sees it as a business opportunity. His idea of turning Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East is to make it a destination for global tourists. After all, original residents are expelled. This is the most extreme and illogical idea ever proposed in the history of peace efforts in the Middle East. Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law and former foreign policy advisor, said in a Harvard University interview in March 2024 that Gaza has great potential as beachfront real estate and suggested Israel remove Palestinians from the area and clear the bombed ruins. Previously, Trump campaigned to end the wars in Gaza and Ukraine immediately, focusing on his agenda to make America great again. But with this new plan for Gaza, he is reopening the door for US military deployment and intervention in foreign countries. Netanyahu said Trump is the best friend Israel has ever had in the White House and is committed to winning the war against Hamas in Gaza. Netanyahu praised Trump as someone who thinks outside the box, offering unconventional ideas and breaking through traditional mindsets. Taking over Gaza would also strengthen Israeli dominance over the surrounding oil and gas reserves, part of Israel's long-term ambition to become a regional energy hub. As with all past colonizations, forced displacement and mass killings are methods of resource exploitation from indigenous populations. In 1999, British gas group BG began exploration in waters 17 to 21 nautical miles off Gaza's coast. Known as Gaza Marine, this area lies within the 20 nautical mile zone handed to the Palestinian Authority, PA, under the 1995 Oslo II Accord. Former PA leader Yasser Arafat signed a 25-year exploration license involving Consolidated Contractors Limited, CCC, British Gas Group, BG, and the Palestine Investment Fund, PIF. A year later in 2000, BG discovered 2 new gas fields in Gaza Marine, with a total reserve of 1.4 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. According to Bloomberg, rebuilding Gaza would cost more than $80 billion US. Revenue from Gaza's natural gas waters could actually help offset the financial burden for both the US and Israel. This US-Israeli plan can be seen as a metaphor, reopening a geopolitical Pandora's box with far worse implications for the Middle East. Issues like control over Gaza have been flashpoints in the Arab-Israeli conflict for decades. The idea of relocating Palestinians recalls an era when Western powers redrew the region's map after World War I, displacing native populations without regard for their rights and autonomy. Back in his 2016 presidential campaign, Trump promised to withdraw all U.S. troops from the Middle East after the Iraq War and focus on domestic development. But this time, his plan to take over Gaza shocked the world. And he didn't even mention that forced displacement violates international law. This issue will further complicate ceasefire efforts between Israel and Hamas, delaying the release of hostages and humanitarian aid into Gaza. Hamas has publicly rejected the mass relocation of Palestinians. Sami Abu Zuri, a senior Hamas official, called Trump's proposal a recipe for more chaos and tension in the region. In reality, Palestinians in Gaza will not allow this plan to succeed. What's truly needed is for the Zionist Israeli forces to end their occupation and invasion, not the expulsion of people from their homeland. Egypt and Jordan have rejected the idea of accepting Palestinian refugees due to a complicated history, the burden it imposes, and the risk of destabilization. Jordan currently hosts the highest number of Palestinian refugees, 2.4 million. The Egyptian military also refuses to allow more Islamic fighters or Hamas supporters into Egypt, fearing it would revive the Muslim Brotherhood movement. Saudi Arabia reiterated its support for an independent Palestinian state and refuses to establish diplomatic ties with Israel unless that condition is met. During his first term as U.S. president, Trump brokered the Abraham Accords, where the UAE and Bahrain normalized relations with Israel. Later, just before the October 8, 2023 assault on Gaza, Saudi Arabia seemed close to establishing diplomatic relations with Israel without requiring an independent Palestinian state. But the current situation shows that a Saudi-Israeli deal is still far from reality. Analysts also believe that Netanyahu's government is at risk if the war in Gaza stops and Hamas remains intact. So Netanyahu is expected to delay the ceasefire process. Professor Houcheng E. Chehabi, a historian at Boston University, pointed out this wouldn't be the first time the U.S. government has committed blatant ethnic cleansing, referencing the Trail of Tears in the 19th century, the forced relocation of indigenous Americans, the 1946 displacement of Bikini Atoll residents for nuclear testing, and the British-led expulsion of over 1,000 people from the Chagos Islands between 1967 to 1973 to make way for a U.S. military base. 3 weeks into his presidency, Trump began using madman tactics, trying to convince others that he could do virtually anything. But not everything he wants will come easily. For instance, Trump had to postpone tariffs on Canada and Mexico. He also failed to acquire Canada, Greenland, or the Panama Canal. Therefore, the plan to take over Gaza will likely also fail. So far, Russia, China, Turkey, Germany, the UK, France, Spain, Ireland, Brazil, Australia, and the Netherlands are among the countries that have issued statements opposing the U.S. proposal to take over Gaza. Any idea to relocate Gaza's population elsewhere contradicts UN Security Council resolutions. In truth, Gaza's future should not be decided by any foreign country, but by its own people.